in Sefer Yetzira. We're in the second parak, the fourth Mishnah, and we're speaking about 22 letters. The world is a revelation. Everything within the world is a revelation. It's a revelation that comes from the kindness of the one who is revealing. Even the revelation of the most severe suffering, even the revelation of hell itself, is a revelation of kindness. This kindness is so kind that no pain can stop it. And to demonstrate the depth of this kindness, pain was created. Pain is very difficult to construct within the infinite glory of boundless joy and pleasure. It's the most remote thing. It's the most impossible thing that can ever exist. And this impossible thing was created through tremendous wisdom and depth and balance, so that it comes out just so that we can receive a vessel within which the soul can perceive itself, and the soul can perceive itself as directly opposite to its source. It took all this, it took all the complexity of the galaxies to construct such a possibility within man, who is the collective of all these particles, and there resides his soul. The soul of the planets and the stars resides in the world of concept. It is not stuck to the world of matter. But the soul of man can descend within the world of matter in order to discover the exact opposite of where it comes from, which is boundless joy and pleasure. And within that opposite is going to be revealed the kindness of the one who designed it to be just so. This means that whenever we experience pain, whenever we experience suffering, we are going into a contract, an irrevocable contract with the universe, that it's going to make this right, in order to reveal the glory and the kindness of the one who designed it to be just so. This is why the righteous were not concerned to go through suffering. They said, I want to collect such contracts. These contracts are worth more to me than any pleasure the world can offer. Anything that I can find in the world of matter can never measure up to the value of a contract that you have with the world that is beyond concept, which is the source of all being, which is the joy and the pleasure that designed and created to reveal its kindness, and now it owes me something. How is that even possible? Well, it's so. It's complicated how to explain. But somehow this is how it came out to be. And so this world that is the exact opposite was revealed in many phases. And the original phase, the beginning, the first phase that it can be revealed in, is in the world of numbers and mathematics. That's the most abstract place where creation took place, and from there it came forth until it received shape and size, and the imagination can draw an entire being. Before the imagination has any access, there are numbers and mathematics that drive creation. And so, for example, before there is any type of entity, there is the being that wants, that is inaccessible to our minds. We cannot discuss the being that wants. And then comes forth one. There is one now that he's from the being, and he's not the being itself. He's some type of a lens. He's some type of a way of experiencing soul that is not that original soul. And then from one there's two, and there's three. This is before we can even give them any form or shape. They're boundless. They're unlimited energy. We can't even relate to anything else but to say that something that is more than one became from the one. And so to know how the one became many gives us access to the secret of why is this so good? Why is this so good that this is worth suffering for? How is this such a deep pleasure that for this pleasure no pain can hide its glory? And so these original forces, as they became, what are they doing? They are hiding the unity. The unity seems to be complex. The unity seems to be multiple. And yet, he is just the same one that he was before. He is the root of it. He is it. And yet, it seems like there is more than him. It seems like there is a conflict within him. It seems like he wants different things. And yet, at the root of that is the one who wants one thing, to reveal his glory. What is his glory? His ability to be kind. Where is he going to be kind in order to reveal his glory? In the most unkind place. How is there going to be an unkind place in one who is only kind? Oh, for that we need the complexity of a world. For that we need the complexity of matter that can contain spirit, a concept that can forget its own concept, on souls that hide their roots, their souls that give them life. Layer upon layer, world upon world, until there can be a possibility that we forget our real nature. And when we forget our real nature, of course, we suffer. And so numbers are at the root of creation. And therefore, through numbers, by knowing the right numbers, by knowing the origin of the letters, the origin of the forces that dressed up as everything, we return to recognizing the soul, because each one of us is a microcosm. Each one of us represents the entire. Each one of us has all the parts of everything that exists within Source as it reveals itself. And all these revelations that exist within each one together create a map which will allow us to get to know the source from where we come. Our body represents a map of how concept, represented by the brain, dresses up in action, represented by the liver, through emotion, represented by the heart. And then this life force gains continuance through reproduction. And so all this is written out in the map. Everything that's taking place to spirit is being expressed in the map, which is the body. And so to know the unity that resides within the body, we get to know all the parts of the body. The 22 letters represent the forces that together create the body, together create the entanglements that we have with the external world. 22 forces that are going to entangle the infinite consciousness into certain specific expressions that it desires and certain expressions that it wants to stay away from. This is through the 22 letters. Whenever we're feeling drawn towards something, one of the 22 letters is involved. Whenever we're feeling repulsed by something, one of the 22 letters is involved. This feeling of being drawn or being repulsed, relates to the 10 spheres that we spoke about before. The 10 spheres are the attributes through which these 22 organs are going to be animated in order to come forth with their production. And so as we learn to identify these roots, we can identify everything that's coming forth within us, everything that's animating us. We're constantly being animated by thoughts, impulses, desires. These animations can be identified if we learn the letters, if we know the nekudas, if we know the spheres, we understand what's animating. And then we can understand if these animations are causing a unification between body and soul, or these animations are causing conflict between body and soul. And so 22 letters, he says, Mishnah Dalet, 22 Oisius Yesod, Kivuz begalgal berilosh orim, v'choizer agalgal panim v'ocher. 22 letters, they are the ones who are in the wheel of words that is constantly coming forth. The way the spirit is receiving form, it's constantly coming through the wheel of words. There are concepts that are forming in my mind, but those concepts, they come before words, and then they come forth to a different area in the brain, and in that area of the brain they're going to receive words. And so that place where concept receive words, that place that gives over between the urge, the impulse that's not yet a word, and there it goes to receive interpretation and to become word, that's where the ruach becomes dibur. That place is the wheel that gives form to the world of soul, the world of concept and meaning. The world of concept and meaning, in order to come forth to our world, to receive words, it goes through the wheel of letters. And there it receives names and words in order to form the spirit, in order to express ideas in the world of words. The world of words is a much more limited world than the world of concept. The world of concept is a much deeper world. There are many concepts, there are many experiences, there are many ideas that might not have words to be expressed. The words just can't contain that. And yet it can be experienced. And so that filter that brings down into the world of words is called the galgal of words. And that galgal, the first level of speech that gets created by the sounds, starts with 2-letter combinations. 2-letter combinations, the first level of speech, 3-letter combinations, and then from there 4-letter, 5-letter combinations. But in Hebrew you won't find a root that's more than 5-letter combinations. Some bring everything back to 3-letter combinations. And some argue that even all the 3-letter combinations are really related at their root to 2-letter combinations. The 2-letter combinations come back at their root to the 1 letter that represents a force of creation. The 1 letter that represents something tangible within the world of spirit. How can something in the world of spirit be tangible? If we can identify it in the way that nature really identifies it. And this means that we can recognize one of the original gods, one of the original forces, as it came through all the different layers to become this specific force. So for example, we know the right side of the spirit, which represents love and connection, is represented in the element of earth as silver. In and of itself, it's represented in the element of water. But in the world of earth, it's represented as silver. The element of fire, which represents Gevurah, the left side, in the world of earth, in the Yesod Ofer, in the element of earth, it represents gold. Silver to the right and gold to the left. And so these are identifications of nature. This is not something that someone decides. This is the imagination of nature as it dressed up in these different forms. Wisdom is to align with this language of nature and to recognize the forms within each expression, to know how to bring them back to their roots. And so if I see a person animated by an attribute, they're very excited. But what's exciting them? Is it fire? Is it air? Is it water? What's the base of the excitement? This is again the same language. This is the way the heart is going to represent these elements. And this can be both in happiness. There can be a happiness that is an excitement related to water. There can also be a happiness that is related to fire. There's an excitement, like it says in Shir Hashirim, Rishopei Rishpei Esh shall have a siyah. The flames of love, even though love is usually resembled to water. The right side represents water, but no, in the right side there's also fire, water, and air, and earth. And so in earth, you have gold, silver, and copper, and metal. These are the 4 different elements in the earth. So metal is the earth within the earth. And so this is how we recognize the forces. These forces are the aleph base. The aleph base means we're going to build a world. We're going to build a world in the world of speech. So first we need the elements with which the world was built. Like it says about Bezalel, who built the Mishkan, which is the same idea. And so to build the Mishkan, it says, Yudei ahoyer Bezalel, letzaref oisias shenivru behem shemayim v'aretz. He knew how to combine the letters that created heaven and earth. And so therefore he can build a Mishkan. Therefore he can understand his body. Therefore he can understand the letters and the forces and understand the 70 languages. What are the 70 languages? The ability of syllables and vowels to encapsulate soul, to encapsulate spirit. Every member of the Sanhedrin needed to know 70 languages. 70 languages means, how does spirit dress within the world of sound? How does that work? What is that operation? There is hidden the secret of all language. But Lashon HaKodesh is based on the forces themselves. The forces themselves, the fire and the water, as they dress up in all the different permutations, because essentially everything is a balance between right and left. All the 10 spheres are combinations of right and left. Even in the Keter, in the highest level where there is no din, it's all rachamim, it's all compassion, yet it's no longer the infinite. And to the extent that it's no longer the infinite, now there is a will. If there is a will, there was some type of restriction, there was some type of constraint. And so the right and the left are within all forces. All these forces, as they have different balances of right and left, combine to create all the different permutations. All the permutations come out and create reality. And the reason for restriction is the basic requirement of leaving the infinite. There's no way to leave the infinite without restriction. And so if we're going to create a platform for evil, we're going to create a platform for suffering, we're going to create a platform that can be a direct contradiction to the source, what is the first thing that's going to be required in order to manifest such a reality? First, we need restriction. We need something that's going to leave the infinite and become less than the infinite in order for it to be able to eventually believe that it's against the infinite. And so this restriction happens through the permutations of the letters that are containing more and less of the chesed and the din, more or less of the revelation and the restriction. With these building blocks, we're going to create beings that are going to have less revelation than the original light. And so in our body, we can see some organs are more noted to the right, they have more water, and some have more fire. Some are very easy to please. Some of our organs are very happy and they easily get along, and some of our organs are big troublemakers. They're very specific and they're very precise. Sometimes it's humanity as a whole is having this problem. Sometimes a certain community, a certain belief system, a certain culture. Sometimes just an individual is getting into conflict with one of his organs. But these letters, as they're coming out into manifestation, they're restricting the infinite light. It's no longer infinite. It's no longer an experience of infinity. And what can eventually happen? One of them is so restricting that the entire organism, the soul, forgets its infinite nature. And it descends into suffering, it descends into Egypt, into slavery and bondage, into belief in things that don't exist, in situations that don't exist, in problems that don't exist. But the belief is such that it's a problem, and therefore we got a problem. Or it recognizes the restriction, and it has a sincere problem. It recognizes that it's in a predicament where it can no longer reach its infinite nature. It can no longer release itself from the bondage. And so the bondage is created through the forces, the entanglements, the potential for the entanglements. Here the forces are all holy. Here the forces are beyond entanglement. And yet these are the forces that are going to create vessels that eventually are going to be able to be entangled. The unity has no room for entanglement. And so this entanglement happens through 22 letters that have 231 gates. What are 231 gates? 231 different combinations of two letters. Two forces combining as one. We will have, out of the 22 letters, 231. The way that this happens mathematically is that if we were to combine all possibilities of the 22 letters, any two letters possible, we would do 22 times 22. But then we would reduce all the duplicates. Wherever there's Aleph Aleph and Beis Beis, Gimel Gimel, we would take that out. So we'd reduce it by 22. So from 484 we would go back to 462. And then we would go to half of that, because if we have a combination of Aleph Beis, we would no longer count the combination of Beis Aleph, which is the exact opposite of it. So because we're talking about forces. So the combination of two forces, there's 231 combinations of two forces out of the 22 letters. And so from these 22 combinations is built all the houses for the potential for complication. A force itself doesn't complicate itself, but a force that is now combined with another force, now there might be a conflict. One of these forces is going to be in charge of the other force. Either the Aleph is in charge of the Beis, and then the Aleph comes first, or the Beis is in charge of the Aleph, and then the Beis comes first. And so when this happens, when the forces are in charge of each other, now there's the beginning of constriction. The 22 forces are a complete representation of the source. But the 22 forces, once they come out into manifestation, they are bringing forth their own measurement upon another entity, and then there's constriction. And so these are called the 231 gates of speech. The name Yisrael is the one who masters the divine forces. The name Yisrael, one of the permutations of it is Yeshrelo. There's 231 gates. Meaning the name Yisrael represents one who has mastered the gates of speech. And the gates of speech represent the combinations of forces. What we're doing now is creating associations between forces, between nerves that are actually changing their position as a result of the words. And so to master these forces, to know what is the will of the soul, what will give pleasure to the wisdom as the words are formed, what will bring forth a truth that will heal the Shekhinah, will heal the revelation of the source. And so this wheel starts with the 231 combinations. The 231 combinations can be read forwards and backwards. Like we said, the total would be 462. Because the original 22 times 22 is 484. And so 462 is panim v'ocher, it's 231 going forward and 231 going backward. When it's going forward, then it's bringing forth blessing. The higher one is in charge of the lower one. The one who is closer to the source is in charge of the one who is receiving from the source. Then, when this order applies, this is from the right side. This is a combination that brings forth chesed. When the order is reversed, when the force that is smaller is in charge of the bigger force, this is called judgment. This is a combination of judgment. And so the wheel goes forth and back. And when the higher force is in charge of the lower force, there's blessing. And when the lower force is in charge of the higher force, there's restriction. And so this is the wheel of speech based on the original forces, based on the power of the source to dress in all these different forms. And these different forms will be visible in all the different manifestations, starting with the body. V'zeh similar davar. This is a sign to what's being said. En b'toiv l'mala me'onig ve'en b'ro l'mata minega. There isn't anything higher than pleasure, which is spelled oineg, ayin, nun, gimel. The three letters of pleasure are at the highest good. Ve'en b'ro l'mata minega. There isn't worse in evil than nega. Nega means the opposite of pleasure. Some form of affliction, some form of suffering. So there's nothing higher than pleasure, spelled ayin in gimel. There's nothing lower than nega, spelled nun gimel ayin. The same letters, and yet when they're in one order, they create the best concept. And when they're in another order, they create the worst concept. So the same way the forces, when they're in the right order, they create the best concept. When they're in the wrong order, they create the worst concept. The same way the human being, when he's in the right order, he creates the best concept. When he's in the wrong order, he creates the worst concept. And so in the combinations of the letters, for example, if we look at Aleph Beis, the first two letters, so according to how we're going to associate the letters with the forces, we would say Aleph means air, which is the spirit that lives within all. And Beis means the force that animates the planet Saturn. For example, there's different ways of interpreting the Beis, but on the simplest way of counting, we start in the regular order of Shetzam Chanchal. Shetzam Chanchal are the 7 letters, that represent the 7 planets, the Korvei Lechet, the planets that surround the sun. And Shetzam Chanchal starts with the Shin, Shabtai. And so Shabtai, which is Saturn, he is in charge of a vibration here on earth that relates to our relationship to the spiritual. And so when the spirit is animating Shabtai, then blessing is coming. When Shabtai is animating the spirit, restriction is coming. And so the same 2 combinational forces are activated, and yet it depends who is activating and why is it taking place. If the spirit is activating, then a blessing is coming forth. If the planet is activating, then some type of restriction is coming forth. And so it is with all the different combinations. And this is visible in the body. If the heart is animating, meaning there is actual desire, and therefore there is speech, then there is blessing coming forth. There's speech from the heart. If the speech is forcing the heart to give life, and it speaks things that are against the will of the heart is being animated by that speech anyways, but it's not good for the heart. And so the heart is suffering that speech. And so again, we see how the combination of the forces, for example, the heart and the mouth, if the heart is in charge of the manifestation, then the mouth is pleasing to the heart. If the mouth is in charge of the manifestation, then there's conflict between the mouth and the heart. And like this, for all different combinations. And so there we see how the relationship between the letters is the one that decides how things are going to manifest. The Ravid says in the parish, it says the Galgal is speaking about the wheel. When we speak about the personal wheel, we're speaking about our own ability to express concept. But the wheel of creation that has the letters is around us. There's 12 zodiac signs and the 7 planets that surround the sun. And so these forces are like a wheel. They're like a big clock that's constantly ticking. And different things are being animated in the clock. At different times, different forces are being animated and sending their vibrations and causing different movement. They're all animated in order to create the continuous existence. But different forces are animating the wheel in order to manifest specific realities. And so it says, this galgal, this wheel goes, chozer galgal, perish galgal, chozer makav oisis kavus. So the wheel is always turning, even though the letters are always remaining in their place. Because he placed everything in its specific place. Each planet, each star has its specific place from where it vibrates. And he set all these in a big wheel. So when it goes in the direction of kindness, then it builds and it gives life and it helps life. When it goes in the direction of judgment, then it destroys and it takes things apart. Panim means the higher one is in charge of the lower one, that brings kindness. And backwards means the lower one's in charge of the higher one, that brings judgment. The sages said, in order to create life, he combined the attribute of compassion with the attribute of judgment, and together they created the world. The order of the letters that go forward are the exact opposite order of the letters that go backwards. והמשל בזה, the example, אם תמצא ושלפונים אל, תמצא בצד הדין נקרא חוד לוי. So El, the Aleph and the Lamed, creates divinity. And Loi, the Lamed before the Aleph, creates annihilation. And so this is because it goes back and forth. V'chein kilam is the same for everything. V'similar davar, a sign, shall tmurad, how these letters can turn from one extreme to another. As the permutation changes, so too the meaning changes from one extreme to another. So the same letters that create pleasure create pain. Nega means suffering. There isn't anything that chesed is going to give that is beyond pleasure. Chesed can give many things. Kindness can give many things. But all those things, why are they good? Because they lead to some type of a pleasure. If they didn't lead to some type of a pleasure, what makes them good? And so every type of chesed leads to pleasure. Ve'en bero, there's nothing in judgment lemata minega. Why is it bad? Because it leads to pain. If it didn't lead to pain, it wouldn't be bad. If it didn't lead to pleasure, it wouldn't be good. These measurements are directly against the measurements of Toivara and the Nefashis. What does it mean that in the dimensions of soul there can be good and evil? In the dimensions of soul, the soul can try to create pleasure, or it can try to create pain. If it tries to create pain, then it's in the depth of evil of the soul. And if it tries to create pleasure, then it's in the depth of good of the soul. This is in the essence of the soul. The more the soul is aligned with its true nature, the soul will know how to manifest pleasure that doesn't result in pain. But there isn't anything better. This is what the tzaddikim are promised. Tzaddikim yoshvim v'tresaim v'reshaim v'nehenim miziv hashchina. This hana is what they're leaning on while they're receiving pain. They're leaning on a pleasure that's going to result from this pain. Therefore, they say this pain is good. Why is it good? It's leading to a greater pleasure that's so much greater than the pain. But if there is no pleasure, it's not good. And so therefore he says, Ein betoiver, which is the tzad chesed l'mal ha'moenik, ve'en bero, which is the tzad adin l'mata meneged, v'chulam oisies achodim, but they're the same letters. The letters that create pleasure and the letters that create pain are the same letters. There's no distinction between the letters. You're not going to use a different set of 22 sounds in order to create the pain. The pain and the pleasure are created by the same sounds. Therefore, people get confused about what's being created. Because they're hearing the sounds, but they're not realizing what it's causing to the soul. Where is it taking the soul? From changing the order, the meaning will change from evil to good. All the letters are the same letters. Is the order of the letters. When the letters get turned backwards, they destroy the compassion that was within the letters. When life would discover itself naturally, then we would see the compassion. But when we confuse the letters, we think that we are interfering with life's process to make it better. This interference results in a confusion of the letters, and then life comes out as restriction. This is already inherently in the design of life, the way that it should come out. Mishnah Hey, the fifth Mishnah. Ketzat Shaklan ve'emiran. How did he do the weighing and the exchanging? It says Aleph im kulam ve'kulam im Aleph. Aleph, the letter Aleph with all the other letters, and all the other letters with the letter Aleph. Beis im kulam ve'kulam im Beis. V'chozes chalil nimtzi kol ha'yitzir v'chol ha'diber yotze b'shem echad. He switched everything around in a way that he combined all the possible combinations in order to create creation, in order to form something that is specific to receiving and revealing his light. And so Aleph with everything, everything with Aleph. When Aleph is with everything, that's compassion. When everything is before the Aleph, that's restriction. The same he did with the Beis, combined it with everything, besides with the Aleph, which it was already combined with. And like that, all of creation, all of the world of formation, which is the world of speech, comes out from one name. What is the one name? The one name is the spirit that we're calling. All the combinations of the letters, all the sounds and the syllables and the vowels, who are they calling? They're calling one spirit, the only one that's available to be called. He will appear according to the syllables, according to the sounds, according to the vowels. But the one who is being called is called in one name. The name is the name that belongs to the one before we formulate him in speech. When we formulate speech, we are calling that one, but we're calling him in a specific form. Before we called him in that form, he was the name that's waiting to be called with all the 22 letters. Whichever one we're going to use, whichever combination, he is going to appear according to that combination. So it says, derived, Ketza Shoklim Vemilan Aleph im Kulam Perishke Alpha Beiser Shoina, Mascheles Aleph al Seder Alle Beis Gimel Dal Devov Zayin Chestes Yud Kuf Lamed Mem Nun Sama Chaim Pei Tzadi Kuf Reishin Taf, Hare Aleph im Beis, Vishar Kol Oisius, Imam V'chakech Yidale Gois Aleph Yove Aleph im Gimel, V'yid Aleph Oisius Bedileg Achas Imoim. And so there are many different ways of combining the letters and understanding the combinations. Here he's speaking of combinations that start with Aleph, where all the 22 letters are involved in the combination, but the first letter, the one that's in charge of all the others, is the Aleph. Because this is really the nature of our experience, is that the body is always there. Everything is always there. It's not like when we speak, only the mouth is there. When the mouth is speaking, everyone is still there. It's just that the mouth is now taking precedence. And the same goes for every other organ. Now the ear is listening. The ear is not sitting there alone. The ear is not hanging in the air. The ear is combined to an entire body. The whole body is there, but the ear is taking precedence because that's the activity that's now being observed by the soul. That's where the attention is. And so the Aleph is always with everyone. The question is the order of how are the letters organized. Which one is before which? What's taking precedence over what? And that might be different for all of us. Even if by all of us, let's say the ear is activated, but what's after the ear? To some, there might be different things depending on what's going on inside them, what happened before. When did they eat? What were they thinking about? What type of emotions were they experiencing? This will result in different organs coming after the ear as the most active right now. And this will result in an entirely different experience. And so all these different permutations and combinations, this is what creates the potentials for life. And this is what creates the vessels that receive the life force and give it form. Mishnah Vov, Yotzar mitoyu mamash. He created from chaos something substantial, a thing of substance. And so before there was potential, but the infinite potential results in chaos. Chaos meaning there is no order, there is no specific manifestation that's coming forth. From that vast potential came forth a specific choice, that this way it's going to be and not all the other ways. And so from Tohu came Mamash, came form. V'osa eino yeshnoi. He made what isn't into what is. He made the force that had all potential but no manifestation into a specific manifestation. He gave it specific form. V'chotzav amidim gedolim me'avi she'eino nitpas. He carved great beams from air that cannot be perceived. The air is taking form as we speak. The air that we perceive is receiving an interpretation and becoming, on a physical level, something that is happening entirely in a place that cannot be measured. This is the Avish Ein Nitfas. The Avish Ein Nitfas is before air. All four elements were created from Avish Ein Nitfas, from air that cannot be perceived. This is an air that is a potential, that is before the four elements. It's before any form. And from that form, he created potentials, and these potentials are even now taking on form in me. These potentials in my cells, they've been around for ever since there's existence, but now they took on this form. Now, only for this moment, they took out this form. Now they're already in a different form. The Avish Ein Nitvas, the air that cannot be perceived, is constantly changing its face. It's constantly becoming different things. I can instruct it and it will become. It will dress up. And yet all this is being drawn on a drawing board. This drawing board is the air that cannot be perceived. וזהו סימן, צויפי מי מבויסס כל ליצור. וסכל הדברים שהם אחד. He is constantly seeing and exchanging all the things from one thing. And all formations are coming from one form. And all formations are revealing one form. And so if you want to find the place where the wheel is giving form, go to the place where the soul is looking. Because there where it's looking, that's where it's doing its magic. That's where it's giving form. It sees, tzoife, it sees within its heart, and meimer, then it decides how to react. It decides how to become as a result. It sees, and that seeing causes an exchange. And then all the things are coming forth from that one name. The name that is all words, the name that is all sounds, the name that gets called by any type of speech. וסימן לדובר 10 חפצים בגוף אחד. A sign to the place where you will find this form of manifestation called speech is anywhere you will find 22 dressing up the one. Where do we find that? In the body. The body is 22 parts dressing up the one part. What are the 22 parts? The 7, the 12, and the 3. The 3 are the 3 elements. The elements that are present within the body, the fire, the water, and the air, are giving form to the soul, are revealing the soul. And so 22 organs, 22 parts, v'guf echad, in one body. As these 22 reveal the one, the same the speech, which is 22, reveals the one. The same the zodiac, which is 22, reveals the one. Everywhere, the 22 are a revelation of the one. So it says in the parish, Yotzar mito mamash, he made from chaos substance, parish lemamoshe shel Yetzira keil b'shtur ledovetoy. He gave manifestation to the formation. He dressed something that's invisible to, and he gave it form. Was eino yashne, he made what isn't to be. V'atzilis hanimshach mi'ayin, she'ein letzura v'dimyon. The atzilis means the emanation, where the beginning of the will is revealing itself. In that place we still call it ayin. We say there is no matter there, there's no form there. There's just will, there's just life, there's some form of intelligence that we cannot comprehend. And so there isn't any form, there isn't any image, there isn't any way of drawing anything. And yet, all everything that comes forth from it, which is going to have form, which is going to have revealed intelligence, is not going to be able to look back at it and understand or relate to it. And yet from this place that has no form and everything is formless, comes forth everything that has form in order to reveal that place. It seems like a contradiction. Everything that has form, why is it here and dressed in form? To reveal the glory of that place that has no form. Because the form is revealing to us in details what over there exists in essence. So for example, in the world of form, we can see a demonstration of kindness. We can see a demonstration of one form giving to another form. That might be a human being demonstrating kindness, or it might be within nature, that we see the mother of an animal that's compassionate to the child, and we see a demonstration of compassion. This is revealing us the nature of the one who has no form, and yet he has compassion. What is his compassion where there is no form? We can't relate. We can't understand the form of his compassion, but we know that given that he revealed from within his glory compassion, then in the essence there's compassion. We see that there's conflict within the revelation. What does that reveal about the source? The formless cannot be in conflict with itself, but the formless has created us in such a form that when there is conflict, it's like we're in conflict with the formless. And so in that sense, the formless can be in conflict because it gave us that power. And so everything within the revealed world will reveal to us something about the unrevealed world, about the world that we have no access to. And yet the world that we have no access to is the only real world. That's the only place where everything is taking place. From there, we are receiving whatever it is that exists. Whatever it is that we have that's real, we're receiving from that place that has no form. She has 7 beams, 7 amudim, 7 things that hold up the world. And these are the 7 attributes that animate life. If the attributes wouldn't animate life, then life would cease to exist. If there was no kindness in creation, creation wouldn't continue. And so the beams are the principles upon which life is leaning in order to exist. And all these principles unite in one principle called the Midas HaYesod. That's why it says Tzadik Yesod Olam. Al Amad Echad Olam Omed. On one beam the world stands. With Tzadik Shmo, his name is Tzadik. Tzadik is the ability to communicate, the Midas HaYesod. On that the world stands. The world wouldn't continue from one generation to the other if there wasn't the Midas HaYesod. That's obvious. But the world wouldn't continue to have a desire to exist if there was no interaction. Interaction is what causes the unity to come forth into multiplicity in order to reveal the unity within the many. That's called Amekadesh Shemo Berabim, that he glorifies his name, he makes his name holy, where there are many, even though his name is the unity. And so the unity is revealed through the many, just like the kindness is revealed through the suffering. The effort was made in order to go to the other extreme, which is the opposite of the origin from where we come. And here is the place where the revelation happens, in the place that is the opposite. The place that is not the opposite, there's no room for revelation. It always was revealed. There was nothing hiding that we can reveal. We call them gedolim, we call them big beams, lias reshisam gedolim, because they start without limit, from the air that cannot be perceived. Perish miruach alehim, this is the divine spirit. The ruach alehim Chaim, sheyesh behem 610 amudei or, that has 620 beams of light. This is in the Keter. This is what these 620 beams of light are, what unite to become the will. All these descriptions of the attributes and the different numbers in them, these are all existent within man. So if we say that the Keter has 620 beams of light, it means that somewhere within our body, these 620 are represented, and they are resulting in the will. Somehow there's communication between our entanglements that result in a tangible quantification of something that's not quantifiable. Reality is not quantifiable, and yet put a body in it and it will start quantifying it. This is because there are specific functions that are doing that, and so everything that we say exists within the heavens somehow exists within the body, and it's actually doing the function. It's not just a metaphorical existence, it's the actual existence that makes it so. The will is designed by these things. The wisdom is communicating through. So if we say there's 32 paths of wisdom, it means your brain is calculating 32 different manifestations of light, and therefore it comes to conclusions about things. It's actually using that formula right now in order to interpret what I'm saying. If we say there are 50 gates of wisdom, of understanding, Chamishim Sha'ar Bina, it means that in your body there are 50 places where your heart is checking to see how it's supposed to react to a situation. There's an actual gate. Your heart knows that place because your heart will react. How does it know how to react? It knows because it's actually doing the calculation. The body is designed to do these things. Now, some parts can be numb. Some parts can be offline. This is what happens when we fall into Mitzrayim. It means that the Sha'arei Bina are closed. The gates of understanding are closed, and therefore we don't have the enlightenment to know what is right for us. We don't have the realization to see that we are enslaving our soul. So these are actual manifestations of the infinite light, and what happens in the collective happens in the individual. Every beam is a foundation for the world. וגם נוספים מהם כוח לי, אז כל אחד מהם צופה מסתכל בחוכמה עליונה. So these forces, they are alive and they are interacting with reality through us. They are seeing and responding, and therefore we know. We don't know in and of ourselves. Consciousness is empty. Consciousness returns to its source. Consciousness reveals divinity. But consciousness that has been entangled in a body reveals what the body reveals, and that's limited to what is being represented to the body. B'similar davar, a sign is Yichud Hashem, a sign to the unification of all the forces. There are 22 parts. V'shem yad v'shem regel echov beis beguf echad. So it says you have 22 fingers of your hands and 22 fingers of your feet. That's 20. And the hands and the feet, that's 22. And so these 22, where are they coming from? They're coming from the same body. Is one body that reveals the 22. The same way the source, which is the spirit that is within all spirits, from there comes forth everything. Even though the hands go one to the right and one to the left. The same thing with the feet. They are flowing from one body. Just like in the physical realm, in our body, He's revealing to us all the parts coming from the one unity. The same we should know that everywhere we will find many, also in time and also in space. Everywhere we're talking about the same one as He reveals Himself in the many. The same is for the name. All His forces are emanating from His unity, Hapshuta, that is completely simple, that is one beyond count. And everything comes forth from there, and everything represents only that. This is the end of the perek, of the second perek. And we'll stay here. Good night to everyone. Thanks for joining.